Hello, friends. I'm Nayaswami Bharat, and I'd like to talk a little bit about how we can better cope with what's going on now with the pandemic and isolation and an attitude that we can keep in our hearts. I have a friend who is a superintendent of a small school district with 3 schools, 125 teachers in New Jersey. And he's a daily meditator, and he's had a practice for some time. And he told me a story, an amazing story. It was actually, could have been quite dangerous to him, that had happened just a few weeks previously when I was sitting in a superintendent's school office one Sunday morning. And he said, not 2 weeks ago, the relatives of the wrestling coach that I had to suspend from our school because he was verbally abusing the wrestling players. And the relatives got really upset about that, and they came driving in with 4 cars, really big guys, and all the seats of the car, about maybe 16 or 20 of them, and they came roaring into the parking lot. And as he was telling me the story, I was in the little building, and I could see the parking lot and where they had come. And they drove right up, my friend Thomas said, and right up to the office building. They just jumped out of the car and barged in. Well, my friend Thomas, he said that I quickly called my daughter and said, get school security. Then I hung up, and I only had time to center my energy in the spine. And they barged into the room yelling at him, why'd you do this to our younger relative? And he just sat centered in his spine. He meditated, and he knew where his spine was, and he centered his energy in the spine. And they were yelling at him, and they were just raising their voices and trying to intimidate him. And he was just very calm and very neutral. And after a while, they started to slow down, and they were people that really appreciated physical strength. And he was just sitting so calm that they saw that he had a strength inside of him. It was different in the way that they expressed strength, but they could see it and they could feel it. And so they started to calm down a little bit. And in that openness, he explained that why he had to do it for the sake of the students at his school, and that he hopes that their relative, the wrestling coach that was suspended, could change his attitude and way of working with the students, and he's very happy to have him back. Well, all the relatives took the young coach, their relative, aside and told him he had to change his ways, and he did. And it was a very interesting experience because, especially in light of what Swami Kriyananda said, that when we're centered in ourselves, outer events respond to our inner energy control. Because when you have your energy, your life force centered in yourself, that is more magnetically stronger than reactive, dissipated energy. And outer events conform to your inner control. And, we can't control things that happen around us, especially some event like we're experiencing today, mass karma. Everybody's affected by mass karma. Swami Kriyananda said that, in mass karma, if a plane is supposed to go down, there's people whose time isn't yet ready to go, but they have a weak aura, and they may get on that plane. But he said that when people have a strong aura and it's not their time to go, something will happen to take them out of that situation where they don't go down with the plane. Well, the only thing that we can control, as you know, is our own energy. And that's what yoga says, is to be a cause, not an effect. And we have all kinds of techniques that really change our energy. Many years ago now, well over 20 years, I was on a trip, actually many trips, and I was flying so many places that one morning I woke up and I didn't know what region of the world I was in. And I said, now, am I in the South Pacific? Am I in the East Coast of America? Or in Montana? Or am I somewhere in Europe? And then I kind of looked around the room. I think I'm in Montana. So I'd been traveling an awful lot. And I found myself in Hawaii in the mountains inland. And it wasn't a very good program. Most of my programs were, people were very receptive and very giving. And the host sponsor was called away. And I ended up in this really cruddy, funky room. It was really dirty, and just a few people at the program. And maybe I'd just been on the road a lot, but I was feeling a little funky by the whole setting and a little moody, and I felt trapped. And maybe a feeling that you're feeling right now is trapped. Not being able to leave your house, or maybe you're in a high-rise apartment and you have to go down to the elevator to even get outside and brave the narrow corridors. And we can feel trapped. Well, here I was in Hawaii, and I felt trapped. and I was moody, and I couldn't, with my mind, get out of it. And so I said, I've got to change my energy. And so very intently, I sat down, and it took work. But with the force of my mind and will, I did 2 hours of the Hong Sau meditation practice, where you're observing the breath, and you get into the pauses and the feeling of stillness, and it just calms the restlessness, the thoughts, but also that calms the feelings in that stillness. And I instantly, with that 2-hour meditation, just changed my whole energy, and I was able to really enjoy where I was at. And so I know that it's difficult if we're feeling trapped over a long period of time, 6 weeks or 7 weeks. But it's like if you have a chronic illness that lasts for some time, it can wear you down, but you just can't give into it. You have to rise above it, or otherwise you can go in despair, and it doesn't help. And you realize it's not a very good strategy to use. You have to keep your energy high. Paramahansa Yogananda, he said that everybody's experience of life is different. And he said that it depends on, how high we lift our consciousness. And that the answer to every problem can be solved if we, if we solve it in our inner world. And that's the place to take care of it. And then we can be free of these tendencies, our habits, but also our outer environment. I've traveled, well over 30 countries, and for, 40 years. And I've always landed in a really magical place with incredible people, responsive audience, and really giving. And we create our own environment by the energy that we put out. And maybe in the beginning, we're just learning, and we have to just take more time and, in practice of these teachings, and working with having a positive attitude at all times. But we build a strength and momentum in our lives that really does change outer environments. In a class in India, Nayaswami Bharat, he talked about, he has this, I won't say tendency, but it just, you'd have to say a consciousness, where he can walk into a room that's inharmonious, and that room will turn harmonious. And he just, and it's because of his just inner calm that he has. And it's just such a strong vibration that the outer environment responds to his inner environment. There's an amazing story of an American Polish priest who he went to be a clandestine missionary in Russia, and his name was Father Walter Syczyk. And he was in Poland when Russia invaded Poland. He went there in 1939. And he was taken as a prisoner back to Russia and put in the prison, the Lubyanka in Moscow, and he was tortured, and the Russians wanted to make him a spy, go back to the Vatican and spy for the Russians, and he wouldn't do it. And he spent 15 years afterwards in forced labor in Siberia. And he had had all these kinds of ideas in his mind on how he was going to serve God. And as a young priest, he remembers on just leaving for Poland, saying to God, watch what I'm going to do for you, as just a real on fire priest. And then he learned that it was more. He learned that what God was going to do for him. But he had an idea of what he wanted to do just to serve God, and he was in a prison camp. He couldn't verbally talk about who he was as a priest. They had to go out in the woods and say mass just with the other two priests, and they had to kind of keep it secret. And he had this whole idea in his mind, what he thought what was needed ideally for him to really serve God and to be with God. And he said after a while, he got to a point where he was just trying to live by God's will and not by what he think God should be doing or what would be best for his ministry or any of those other things. And more, it was just totally accepting how God presented himself in every moment, every day. And just when we resist what is, that's where we get into trouble. And we get out of the flow of God's grace. When he was in the prison at the Lubyanka, and they were trying to get him to be a spy, they allowed him to go back to Rome and leave the prison, but it was with that caveat that he would be a spy, so he just said, no way, I'm not going to do that. And they threatened to kill him. And so that one time, an official came with 10 guards to his cell, and they were leading him out. And he thought, okay, they're going to take me to the firing squad. And he was such in tune with the idea of just flowing to whatever God gave him, that he willingly went with the other guards. And he said that I saw each guard as a minister of God's grace, as an angel. And he walked with these 10 other angels out to the place where he thought he was going to be shot. And they just did it to play with his mind. He found out later. But he was just so in tune with the flow of God in his life that he just didn't resist anything. And he just felt God so strongly. And so that's really the secret to any tough situation we find ourselves in. When we're placed there, if we resist it, then that's when we get out of tune. That's when we feel frustrated. We have all kinds of ideas on how we think it should be going. But God knows what he's doing. Master knows what he's doing. And if we just cooperate with that, Yogananda often said, where thou hast placed me, that is where thou needs to come. And if we realize that, and then we have our attention for God coming to us and not anything else, there's no ego in that kind of surrender. It's just us and God and the circumstances in which he places us. And that is where we're going to find God. And God is very, very pleased because he knows as a soul that we're moving through our karma much more quickly. As Yogananda said, that the secret to overcoming karma is to accept it calmly and be always even-minded. And that leads to joy, deep joy, and a real feeling of intimacy with God, because we know that God is with us. He's the nearest of the dear. And so I hope in these coming months that you grow ever stronger in this feeling of just being firmly rooted as a little child is placed by her mother, and just have a total acceptance of your life. And if there are challenging parts of your life or parts of you that are challenged by your life, raise your consciousness. Try to serve others in some way. Be expansive, and try to get as much satsang as you can online. And the more that you have a giving energy, then you won't be thinking about yourself, and the more free you'll feel, and the more you'll take advantage of these very interesting times that we're on now. And may you always live in the light and flower in the light and share that light with others and be a force for great change in the world. Bless you, dear friends.